Advanced Studio Classroom is on the air. Do you need some advice for life? Stay tuned as we talk about advice from two successful leaders. You are listening to Advanced Studio Classroom. My name is Brandon, and it is June 3rd, and we are talking about a business article today. I'm your host, Brandon, and we also have two panelists here today. First, welcome Rebecca.
Oh, hey, Brandon. Thanks for having me today. I'm very excited to talk about this business article, especially advice from two successful leaders. But today, we're only talking about one of those successful leaders.
That's right. And we also have Manya here today. Welcome back, Manya.
Thank you. And I am looking forward to learning more about Amazon's success because I do use Amazon quite often.
Yeah, I do too. It's convenient, especially living overseas. I can go on to Amazon and just pick out some Christmas gifts, for example. And it's very convenient. But we're not really talking so much about the company and the way it works as far as like going on their website and ordering things, that sort of thing. But what's kind of behind that, what drives them and what drives the success of employees, we'll be looking into that today. Tomorrow we will look at a former U.S. president, George H.W. Bush, who passed away last year, and we're going to look at some quotes that he said during his lifetime and gain some inspiration from that. Now, we are talking about advice. Rebecca, are you one who likes to give advice to people? Do you find yourself giving advice a lot?
That's a great question, Brandon. I actually do enjoy giving advice to people, but I have to be careful because sometimes advice is called unsolicited advice. That is advice that's not really asked for. So I try to be careful. If someone asks me for my opinion or asks for advice, then of course I'm very willing to give advice.
That's an excellent point. Sometimes people have given me advice and I'm like, well, I didn't really ask for it. And I think sometimes it's okay to still give it. You know, maybe that's what they need to hear, even though they don't want to hear it. And I think it also depends on how close you are with the person. Obviously, if you're a close friend or something, then I don't think you have to always be asking, do you want my advice? You already know because of the relationship, right?
I agree. I'm the same way. It really depends on the person. Otherwise, I am more hesitant to give advice randomly.
Or at least preface it with, maybe you're not asking for my advice, but I'm going to, tell you something anyway. At least acknowledge that, hey, maybe you don't want this, but here it is, and you can use it or not. At least acknowledge it if you don't do anything else.
Well, I've also found that it's very helpful to ask the person if they want some advice. Like, do you mind if I give you some advice? Or do you mind hearing what I have to say? Because then it really throws the ball back into the other person's court. And they have a right to say, no, I don't really want advice right now. I just wanted to be able to talk. Because, sometimes people just want to approach you and just share what's on their heart, and they're not looking for advice.
Right.
Just understanding.
That's really a good point. And you just used a phrase, you put the ball back in their court. I love that phrase. It's very useful. What do you mean by that?
Well, that's just another way of saying that you're throwing it back at the other person, and now they have the opportunity to make the decision.
That's right. Right. Very good. Good phrase to know. All right, we are on page 12 talking about advice from two successful leaders. First, we'll hear from Amazon's CEO, and tomorrow we'll talk about quotes from George H.W. Bush. So if you have your magazine, please open it up to page 12, and we'll have our first reading down through line 18.
Advice from two successful leaders. Words of wisdom from Jeff Bezos and George H.W. Bush. Jeff Bezos says this one sentence is the key to Amazon's success. Jeff Bezos has been sharing one powerful sentence of advice for the past 20 years. It's a sentence buried in his first annual shareholder letter, which has been included with every year's letter since then. It communicates the key to Amazon's success, according to Bezos. Setting the bar high in our approach to hiring has been, and will continue to be, the single most important element of Amazon.com's success. Amazon most certainly takes its hiring process seriously. A key part of the process is to ask questions that assess how well each candidate scores on Amazon's 14 leadership principles. I've listed the principles below, edited for brevity.
Okay, so we start off today talking about Jeff Bezos. He is the CEO of Amazon. Many of you maybe are familiar with him. He's the wealthiest man in the world, right? And so we're going to look at some of what Amazon kind of follows. They have 14 leadership principles that they follow. So if you're going to get a job there, I guess they're going to ask you about these 14 principles and maybe even give you a test or something like that. It's ingrained into their employees. In fact, on their website, they say we use our leadership principles every day, whether we're discussing ideas for new projects or deciding on the best approach to solving a problem. If you go to their website, amazon.jobs, that part of their website, you will see that there. Well, there is one sentence in particular that we're looking at. We'll get to that in just a moment. You see it highlighted there. If you have your magazine on page 12, we have that sentence highlighted. But we learn that Jeff Bezos has been sharing one powerful sentence of advice for the past 20 years. And this sentence was buried in his first annual shareholder letter. Manya, what is a shareholder?
A shareholder is a person who owns part of the company and therefore gets part of the company's profits and the right to vote on how the company is controlled.
All right, so he had this first, shareholders meeting or this letter. And of course, these people are investing into the company, right? And so these principles were there from the beginning. And it has been included in every year's letter since then. And it communicates the key to Amazon's success, according to Bezos. Now, what is this sentence, Rebecca?
Okay, this is the moment we've been waiting for. We get to read the sentence. Setting the bar high in our approach to hiring has been, and will continue to be, the single most important element of Amazon.com's success.
All right, so setting the bar high, Manya. What does it mean to set the bar high?
If you're setting the bar high, that means something is hard to accomplish. And it comes from a sport, actually. It comes from pole vaulting.
Oh.
So in pole vaulting, usually there is a bar, and the person has to take a pole and then jump over the bar.
Yes.
And the higher the bar is, the harder it is for the person to jump over it.
Oh, that's great. That helps us to kind of get a visual for what that phrase means, that idiom. And we do this in life. We want to set the bar high sometimes. Or maybe in a company, we set the bar high. It has to do with expectations, right?
Right. And sometimes in a classroom setting, you might say that the teacher really sets the bar high. Or maybe a student just got up and gave a speech and did an excellent job. The teacher may say, oh, wow, this student really set the bar high. Now everyone's going to have to try to reach that desired expectation.
Very good example. All right. So that's what Amazon is out to do. They want to set the bar high in their approach to hiring. And, they want to continue this, and they've been doing this for years. So Amazon most certainly takes its hiring process seriously, and they have these 14 leadership principles that they are using, and the article here lists them here. They have been edited because, it says edited for brevity. In other words, they don't go into as much detail as you might see on Amazon's site or in other places where Amazon publishes this. Well, we are starting off, of course, with point 1. We're going to read all the way through point number 7 as we go through to our second reading.
One, customer obsession. Leaders start with the customer and work backward. They pay attention to competitors, but obsess over customers. 2. Ownership. Leaders are owners. They act beyond just their own team and never say, "That's not my job." 3. Invent and simplify. Leaders expect and require innovation and invention from their teams and always find ways to simplify. 4. Are right a lot. Leaders have strong judgment and good instincts. 5. Learn and are curious. Leaders are never done learning and always seek to improve themselves. 6. Hire and develop the best. They recognize exceptional talent. Leaders develop leaders and take seriously their role in coaching others. 7. Insist on the highest standards. Leaders are continually driving their teams to deliver high-quality products, services, and processes.
Customer obsession, being obsessed with customers. Leaders start with the customer and work backward. What is that referring to, Rebecca?
Well, basically, the idea here is that customers come first. And customers are the priority, and everything that you do is to try to benefit and help the customer. And then you also pay attention to competitors, but obsess over the customer. So customers are important.
Right. Don't be so focused on all your competition that you forget about your customers. The end goal is to give the customers what they want, right? And so focus on them. Don't focus on what all the other companies are doing. You do to some degree, but don't make that the main focus.
And I like that they use the word obsession because it means that that's all they think about, right? When you use that word obsess, it means it's always on your mind.
That's right.
And I, just wanted to kind of add to that. It doesn't really help you much if you're focusing only on competition or only on what's going on around you, and then your customers aren't happy. Because if your customers aren't happy, your business is not going to do well.
And we can apply this to everyday life as well. We're comparing ourselves with other people around us, and we lose focus of what's really important in life. We should just be comparing ourselves with ourselves instead of comparing ourselves with other people. Being the best that we can be and stop trying to measure up to some other standard that was never meant for us. Okay, so number 2 is ownership. Tell us about that, Manya.
So number 2 talks about how leaders are owners. And what that means is that there isn't any job within the company that they cannot do. They own everything they do.
Do you ever think like, oh, once I reach this position, I won't have to do this? Sometimes we can think like that.
Yeah.
And you feel that basically you're saying, oh, I'm above that. Right? I don't need to. And of course, if you're the CEO, you're probably not cleaning the toilets, but maybe you need to or something one day. I don't know. But I think it's having this mentality that you're still serving, basically.
Something that always amazes me or impresses me about leaders, especially a CEO or a president of a company, how they're able to do the very things that they're delegating to other people to do, like cleaning the toilets or, scrubbing the floors or doing things that we feel like only the lower people should be able to do or should have to do.
There is a great show all about how bosses go undercover and they go and do sort of the jobs that they don't do themselves as the CEO. But after that experience, going undercover and then doing something like cleaning the toilets, they really have a full understanding of what the job demands. And then that in turn helps the leader do their job better.
Yeah, there's something called servant leadership, right? The idea is as a leader, you serve other people. And we see that with, there's a job that needs to be done and you just do it. Now, this doesn't mean you do everything. So you also, as a leader, need to be able to delegate. Does that mean you do all of the jobs all of the time or something like that? Of course, there need to be people helping you, but it doesn't mean that you can't do something at any point, right? If it needs to be done, you take care of it if you have the means to do so. Number 3, Rebecca.
It says invent and simplify. Leaders expect and require innovation and invention from their teams and always find ways to simplify. Now, I think this is really important because, whenever you're in a company, you want to be thinking of ways to make it better or invent different things, be innovative. But then at the same time, you don't want it to be so complicated that people don't understand it. And so that's why they bring the word simplify in as well.
All right. And what is point 4, Manya?
Number 4 says that leaders are right a lot. And basically, if you want to be a leader, you have to have a strong judgment and good instincts because it's hard for people to follow someone who's very unsure about what they're saying.
That's true. You have to be confident in what you're saying and be right a lot of the time, actually, which shows your competence. So you have to have a high competence level. Now, some people think that they are right a lot of the time, but that may not be the case. That's different. So you have to speak with confidence and competency, and that's important as a leader because people are following you, right? And so you need to lead them in the right direction.
Right.
Number 5, Rebecca.
Number 5 is learn and are curious. Leaders are never done learning and always seek to improve themselves. And I think this is very important. Sometimes people think that once they've graduated from college or have a doctorate degree, they're done learning. But the truth is, you're always learning new things. And just to kind of add to this, I think that leaders do need to have a teachable spirit, because sometimes they're not always right and maybe someone comes along and corrects them.
That's true.
They need to be willing to be like, yeah, I have something new to learn.
So
Thank you.
humility is important.
Humility is very important.
Being open to feedback.
Right.
Which these are not easy, right? We do need to be open to what other people have to say. Maybe we did something and it wasn't the best, but someone comes and tells us, hey, this wasn't really right, or what you said was hurtful. We need to be open to constructive criticism. And this point number 5, I think, is very challenging because if you're not naturally curious, you're not a naturally curious person, and you're not thinking about always learning, it's hard to do this, right? But as a leader, we need to be open to improving, open to improvement in certain areas. Number 6, Manya.
Number 6 is hire and develop the best. So as a leader, you have to recognize exceptional talent, people who have something really great to offer. And also as a leader, you have to step into that role of being a coach. And that's not always so easy because you can know everything by the books, but you also have to know how to communicate to your employees.
Yes, I think number 6 is one of the most exciting points. It talks about developing the best. You can call out the good that's in other people. A lot of times we focus on someone and what they're not doing. They're not doing well in a certain area, and we focus on that. That's important. We need to improve, but what are they doing right, and how can you call that out? And there's a talent there. You see it, but it's not quite clear, and you need to help them develop that.
And this isn't really mentioned, but something else I think is really important that kind of to add on to this. As leaders, you need to be prepared to see the people that you're leading or the people you're mentoring do better than you. And so you're basically really helping them to develop their talent, and that could possibly mean that they end up, doing better than you in certain areas.
Yeah, you used an important word there, mentor. How can you mentor people? You can mentor someone in the business world. You can mentor someone in life. But I like that, Rebecca, that they may end up doing better than you. And sometimes we can look at that and get jealous. But if we look at it from the point of view as like, hey, I invested in this person. And hopefully it's because of that investment that helped them to become who they are. Maybe not solely that. But if you look at it from that point of view, then you can say, I played a part in this. And you help them. And so hopefully that will help you not to compare yourself with them, but rejoice in what's going on in their life.
That's right.
Well, we have point 7 before we go to our next reading. What is that one, Manya?
Point 7 says, insist on the highest standards. I think that's a pretty straightforward one. If you're trying to accomplish a goal, you should always insist the best. Otherwise, people will not give you their best.
Especially in the business world, right? You want high-quality products and services, and you want the process to be of the highest quality. And that just goes without saying, right? When we're going to purchase something, we want a high-quality product, especially if the price says it should be high quality, right? Based on how much you pay, you expect high quality. If it's very cheap, then you may have lower standards. But a lot of this, really what we're looking at is expectation, right? What are the expectations of employees? And, what are customers expecting? And how can we meet those expectations? Well, we have 7 more points to look at. So let's go to our third and final reading for today. We'll pick up with point 8 and go down through the rest of the article down through line 36.
Eight. Think big. Leaders create and communicate a bold direction that inspires results. 9. Bias for action. Speed matters in business. We value calculated risk-taking. 10. Frugality. Accomplish more with less. Constraints breed resourcefulness, self-sufficiency, and invention. 11. Earn trust. Leaders listen attentively, speak candidly, and treat others respectfully. 12. Dive deep. Leaders operate at all levels, stay connected to the details, audit frequently, and are skeptical when metrics and anecdote differ. 13. Have backbone, disagree, and commit. Leaders have conviction and are tenacious. They do not compromise for the sake of social cohesion. 14. Deliver results. Leaders focus on the key inputs for their business and deliver them with the right quality and in a timely fashion. You can see why the hiring process at Amazon is indeed the key to its success. Make it a key for your venture's success too.
All right. Are you dreaming big? Are you thinking big? We hear this a lot. Well, leaders create and communicate a bold direction that inspires results. And so we're talking about vision. We need a vision for our lives as individuals, but we also think of a vision for a company. Is it big enough, right? And if it's not big enough, then you may not inspire people very much, right? You need a bold vision. I think there's a term called BHAG, right? Big, hairy, audacious goal. And maybe that comes from Harvard or somewhere. And you can think of what is your BHAG, right? What's that big, hairy, audacious goal? And I don't know what hairy has to do with it. I think it makes it stand out more. But audacious, big, huge, bold goal that you have, right? And you can think of that for your life, but also a company, of course, has that kind of vision. So think big. What's number 9, Rebecca?
Number 9, bias for action. Speed matters in business. We value calculated risk-taking. Now, going back to this word bias, what is that word? Well, it's actually one of our vocabulary focus words, and it means a preference towards a particular subject or thing. And so the idea here is that there is a preference for action in the company. So they want to see things happening. They want to see action being taken and people being involved with risk-taking.
But not just any kind of risk-taking, calculated risk-taking, Manya.
Yes, which leads into the next point, number 10, frugality. That's a really fun word to say.
Yeah, it is.
So if you're frugal, that means you're really careful with your money. So what it means is, as a leader, you should accomplish more with less. You should spend as little money as possible, but accomplish big things and be resourceful.
And if you are calculating your risks, you are taking a risk, but you're thinking about it ahead of time, right?
That's right.
And then if you're frugal, you are trying to save money, and you're accomplishing more with less, as Manya, you just said. And then we have this word constraint. That's not always a fun word to talk about. We like to kind of have freedom, of course, but what does it mean to have constraints, Rebecca?
Well, fortunate enough, this is another vocabulary-focused word. And so it refers to something which controls what you do by keeping you within particular limits. Now, of course, like you were saying, Brandon, we don't always like the idea of being constrained from doing
like
something.
Boundaries. Right?
Yeah, so it's basically like boundaries. But here they're saying constraints breed resourcefulness, self-sufficiency, and invention. And so the idea here is don't spend as much money, being frugal with the money, and because of those boundaries that you have, it actually ends up helping the company a lot more.
That's right. So you have these constraints, but that breeds, it develops into this idea of resourcefulness. If you're resourceful, that means that you have resources at your disposal to use. And then also, self-sufficiency can be a negative thing. We can't be self-sufficient in every area of our life. We need to depend on others, but we also can draw from ourselves and don't always have to depend on others. And then, of course, invention. And moving on, we also need trust, don't we?
Yes, I think this is a really simple one, but we need it. The employees don't have trust in their leaders, then, you're not really going to go too far.
That's right. And number 12 is dive deep, Rebecca.
Yes, leaders operate at all levels, stay connected to the details, audit frequently, and are skeptical when metrics and anecdote different.
All right. If you audit something, you're analyzing it, right? And so you need to do that. And metrics, the measurements that are being used and the stories that are being told, if they don't match up, you may need to ask questions. Anecdote is a story that you may share, and we often say personal anecdotes. If they don't match up with the measurements being used, the metrics, then there may be a problem. Then number 13 is have backbone.
Yes, be brave, have strength, be okay with disagreeing. Yeah, as a leader, you got to stick to what you're convicted by.
That's right, and you have to be tenacious, right? You can't live in fear. You have to go out in a bold manner and not worry about just social cohesion, making sure everyone feels nice. Our last point is deliver results. Leaders focus on the key inputs for their business and deliver them with the right quality and in a timely fashion. We do want to deliver results. We are all out of time today. Tomorrow, we will talk more about advice from another successful leader, George H.W. Bush. Join us then. Until tomorrow, this is Brandon.
I'm Manya.
And I'm Rebecca.
Saying goodbye.
Goodbye.